I am a 33 years old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband, and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted, and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back, and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously, my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it, Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her, and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic, Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives, and how she called back / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency, so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people. Not too long ago, Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees, and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name, and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face to face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting, and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry, and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation. Then, when we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously, I knew what she meant, and it was just another dig, but I said, "Bye," and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat, and she's furious. Well, as much as one can be through text. That I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office, and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help, but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed, and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose, and if she knew, she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong. I'm 25 and am having a micro wedding. My dad's 43 and this woman's at least in her 50s. My dad and this woman have been together like 3 to 4 years at this point. I've never met her as they live on the opposite side of the country. I've had about 3 to 4 conversations with her over the phone and grow more annoyed every time. The first one was when I cut my mom off after a bad blow-up. Going on and on about I'm young and I'll come around and she's my mom still, etc, etc, etc. The second was last summer. I was 8 months pregnant and my car was impounded BC of the insurance company. It was resolved. I called to let my dad know, not her, and she kept going in circles repeating that we need to get it cause it accrues fees. I had a minor snap then. I don't appreciate being talked to like I'm stupid and 15. I was telling him that BC of the insurance company our truck got towed and was in impound, and they were in the process of getting it out. She chimes in, he had me on speaker, and repeatedly said in a tizzy, get that car out. You need it, it's accrues fees, the longer it's there the more it is. Literally repeated the same sentences for 10 minutes, refusing to listen. When I told her it was being handled until I snapped and told her to stop it because it was being handled and I knew perfectly well what impound is and does and to stop talking to me like I'm 16 years old. Again, I was 8 months pregnant and was giving an update, not asking advice. I sent my dad an invite specifically addressed to only him and his RSVP was pre-filled for only him. I've seen him all of 2 times in the last 10 years and the only time he made an effort of contact was when I was pregnant. Well, now I'm getting married, in a week at this point. He never sent his RSVP card, so I texted him asking about him and his parents and he said they're all coming. So I reiterated all 3? And he said 4 including this woman. I said his invite was addressed to him and pre-filled for 1. I haven't had a text since. Not only is it my wedding, but my FH and I are announcing our 2nd pregnancy as well and I don't want someone who lacks boundaries there. Or someone, not from my IL family, that I haven't met / don't know. Yes, I did try talking to him this spring in person about her behavior. I told him I don't appreciate it when she talks to me like some stupid teenager who doesn't know what anything means. I don't call for advice, I call to give updates. I didn't need or appreciate the consistent repeating of information I had made clear I already knew. He told me she's just motherly and I told him that's great for her. But I'm not her child, I'm not her friend, and I don't need another mother. I have 3 and didn't need another one. I'll be sending a message tomorrow asking if he's coming or not and if he won't go without her that's fine. Just don't come at all and I'll send a Zoom link that ends promptly after the ceremony. It's my wedding and I just don't want her there. If he doesn't want to go without her that's fine, I'll send a link to the stream for those who couldn't be there. Background about my sister. 2 years ago, my sister was killed in a car accident. She was riding with a friend to the mall, the friend's parent was driving, and teenage boy plowed through a red light while texting on his phone and hit the car my sister, Carrie, was in. Carrie was killed instantly and her friend, June, was in a coma for 3 weeks before her parents took her off life support. When Carrie passed I was devastated and angry and just not in a good place. Carrie and I had been extremely close. Despite a 7-year age gap between us, we enjoyed a lot of the same shows, we went to concerts together. We volunteered together, and I took it upon myself to guide Carrie like any big sister would do. Our parents were extremely busy with work most days and Carrie and I would often cook together and do crafts when we weren't too busy with school work. Carrie wanted to be a NICU nurse when she grew up and I helped her find a volunteer position at a local hospital to help get her gain some experience being around patients. In short, Carrie was my sister and best friend and when she passed, I was a mess. The last craft Carrie and I made together was a set of candles. We bought the wax at a local craft store and we both made each other a candle and decorated the jar it was in. That was the day before she was killed. At her funeral, Carrie was buried with the candle I made her. The candle Carrie made me sits on my desk next to my favorite picture of her and I together at the beach. Or it did, until last week. Background about my boyfriend. I met my boyfriend about 1.5 years ago, about 6 months after Carrie passed. I wasn't looking for a relationship, I was still grieving my sister's death. But Eugene came along and it was love at first sight. He was extremely supportive, let me cry on him when I needed to, didn't push me into getting over grieving or anything. He was extremely gentleman about everything and very, very patient. After 6 months of seeing each other pretty regularly, we made it official. Eugene came into my life at a very low point, and he has always been very respectful of sentiments I keep from my sister. Never asking me to take them down, always giving me space when I needed to cry. Eugene, along with most, if not all, of my friends and family know about Carrie's candle. There was a point after she died where I would take the candle with me everywhere out of fear that someone might light it, or steal it. Or who knows what. The point is, that candle was and still is a very important part of my life and something that my sister made for me and me alone. When Eugene and I moved in together about 4 months ago, I packed away most of the reminders of my sister and put out the candle and picture on my desk. I felt that this was a huge step because when I'd lived just by myself I had pictures everywhere and a few knickknacks laying around from my sister. I wanted to make Eugene and I's home our home with just a small part of my sister there. Eugene understood and was very supportive. Last week, we had a massive winter storm that knocked out power. We didn't have power for 3+ days. The power was knocked out at Eugene and I's house while I was at work, which did not lose power. Eugene texted me that he was going to light some candles and try and get a generator, so we could have some for of power or at least be able to charge our phones / use lights / etc. Now, we have probably 30+ candles in our house. I am a huge fan of sales, and when Bath & Body Works has a candle sale, I like to stock up and get a range of scents. We have candles scattered all over our house. In the room where my desk is, there are no candles aside from the one Carrie made me. None at all, and there never has been. This room is also downstairs, where Eugene doesn't spend a lot of time, his desk is upstairs. When I arrived home from work last week, I noticed a bunch of candles burning in our living room, safely. Always monitored and not near anything that could ignite. One of these candles was the candle that Carrie had made me. I burst into tears, and when Eugene heard me crying he came out from the bedroom, where he was lighting more candles, and asked what was wrong. I was a wreck and couldn't get any words out. When he tried to calm me down, I shoved past him and locked myself in the room where my desk was and just cried. I don't know how he could be so stupid. He knew, and I thought he understood how sentimental the candle was and how much I cherished having a candle that my now deceased sister had spent time making with me just a day before she was killed. I haven't been able to speak to Eugene since it happened, Tuesday of last week. He has tried to explain why he did it, because he needed candles to be able to see, but I just can't wrap my head around it. He hadn't gotten into the large candle stash I have upstairs right by the living room where Carrie's candle was, but went downstairs, out of the way to grab the most sentimental, cherished item I have. The candle was burning most of the day while I was at work and is now melted and pretty much gone. I do still have the jar it was in, but I can't look at it without bursting into tears. Eugene says it was an accident, but I just don't believe that. He said he was getting around to lighting the candle surplus we have upstairs, but just hadn't gotten there yet. After being home 6 hours alone with no power, I am heartbroken and feel like this is a major slap in the face. I feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespected my sister. I just don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can forgive him for this.